When it comes to weapons in D&D, not all of them were created equal, and many are considered to be mechanically subpar. On top of this, the rulebooks don't provide us much detail on these weapons, leaving us to fill in the gaps of how our weapons look and feel. Due to this lack of information, I'd like to go through and examine all the weapons of D&D to answer: what is this weapon, both in history and in D&D? How is it different from the other weapons available? And does it need to be made better, and how can we do so? For today's video, let's begin the martial ranged weapons with another exotic weapon, the blowgun. The blowgun, also known as a blowpipe or blow tube, is a long, narrow tube used to shoot projectiles. While there are no set dimensions for a blowgun's length and diameter, the tube could vary from 1 to 3 meters in length. An object, typically a dart, is placed inside the pipe, and then the user blows into it to propel the object towards a target. When using darts, they would be traditionally made of hardwood, with fletching made of feathers or fur to help it fly straight. Historically, the blowgun was used by many cultures, but it's most commonly associated with the indigenous and aboriginal peoples of East Asia and the Americas. Unlike their depictions in media, however, blowguns were primarily a hunting tool, used to target small game like monkeys or birds. The North American Cherokee, for example, would use blowguns made of river cane to hunt rabbits. Stealthy and lethal, blowguns were extremely effective pest control, and were used with dry seeds, clay pellets, or darts as ammunition. When used against larger animals or people, some cultures chose to dip their darts in paralytic poisons. In South America, blowgun hunters would fill the tips of their darts with curare, a plant extract that caused paralysis and, in high enough doses, death when entered into the bloodstream. Hunters in the Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia would use a different toxin from the upas tree, which caused convulsions and death by cardiac arrest. Depending on the dose of poison and size of the animal, these could take anywhere from 3 to 15 minutes to kill a creature. Since the blowgun was so widespread across different cultures, different variants of it began to develop. In the Philippines, the sumpit was developed as a hunting tool and wartime weapon. Made of bamboo, these blowguns measured between 1.2 and 1.8 meters long. The darts they use are too short to cause serious injury against larger animals or people, so it became standard practice to dip them in toxin from the upas tree. Sumpits would also have iron spearheads attached to the blowgun, allowing it to be used as a spear once the ammunition was exhausted. Over in Japan, the Fukiya blowgun likely evolved as a ranged weapon for ninja. Used in conjunction with the shuriken, Fukiya eventually developed into a professional sport, maintained by the Japan Sports Fukiya Association. Similar to competitive archery, the International Fukiya Association established competitive standards for equipment and scoring, and has affiliates in the US, France, Germany, and the Philippines. While never reaching mainstream popularity as a ranged weapon, the blowgun can be found in use by many of the same indigenous peoples that used it in the ancient period. Just as effective now as it was then, its ease of creation and use make it very handy for small game hunting, prompting legislation in some nations to curb its use. In the 1930s, Guatemala outlawed the use of the blowgun to protect small game, and while the law was difficult to enforce, it's credited as one of the reasons for the decline of the blowgun in the region. Other nations saw fit to ban it due to its classification as an offensive weapon, with the blowgun being outlawed in the UK, Australia, Canada, the Republic of Ireland, and some parts of the United States. Seen today in pop culture, the blowgun has taken on a life of its own as a primitive weapon of indigenous peoples. but it highlights the ingenuity and creativity of those peoples in creating effective tools out of little more than a tube, a dart, and some air. In D&D, the blowgun is described as a long hollow tube ranging from 1.2 to 2.1 meters in length. Using various types of ammunition, blowguns could be used for hunting, self-defense, or even as a breathing tube while swimming underwater. Present since 2nd edition, the blowgun of older editions cost between 1 and 5 gold pieces, weighed 0.9 kilograms, and dealt 1d2, 1d3, or 1d4 piercing damage depending on the edition. In 5th edition, the blowgun costs 10 gold pieces, weighs 0.4 kilograms, deals 1 piercing damage, and has the ammunition, range, and loading weapon properties. When examining its mechanics, the blowgun doesn't really have any standout features that make it appealing for adventurers. It just barely has a higher range than most thrown weapons, you can only fire once per turn due to the loading property, and its damage is abysmal. I mean, come on. It requires martial weapon proficiency to use, and it literally does 1 damage. No dice, just 1 piercing damage. And it's in the same category as the heavy crossbow and longbow. Using the same 10 gold pieces it costs just to buy a blowgun, ammunition sold separately, you could buy 200 darts that deal 1d4 piercing damage and can be innately used with multi-attack. Looking at all this at face value, I couldn't stop asking myself, why the hell would anyone choose the blowgun? Now, sure, there's always flavor, where someone chooses a weapon because it fits their character idea rather than working mechanically. But no player should feel forced to sacrifice their combat effectiveness just to play a creative character. The blowgun honestly had me stumped, so I started looking online to see what other people were saying. There were a lot of good points made about how logically, the blowgun would be easy to conceal and could inflict poisons onto enemies. I do agree that these would be great justifications for using the blowgun, but the mechanics around these ideas are not really intuitive. Firstly, concealing a weapon comes down to a sleight of hand check, which the Dungeon Master sets the DC for. Yeah, your DM could choose to set it lower if you ask them to, but this is entirely dependent on them, and not intrinsic to the weapon itself. Secondly, poisoning ammunition is expensive to do repeatedly, as a vial of basic poison costs 100 gold pieces and can only coat 3 pieces of ammunition for up to 10 minutes at a time. So after looking all of that up, even the methods to make the blowgun viable are expensive and obtuse, leaving us with a hollow tube that pales in comparison to almost any other ranged option. Alright, I've been sitting on this pun long enough, so I'll just come out and say it. This weapon blows. Much like the whip we discussed last week, the blowgun is an exotic weapon option that is certainly unique, but not exactly viable as a main weapon. While it is possible to make it work by choosing specific classes, subclasses, and feats, the blowgun simply requires a lot more work to get it to the same viability as other ranged weapon options. So, rather than force players to do all that work just to use this weapon well, I want to look at some ideas on how we can fix the blowgun in D&D. My first suggestion is to add different ammo types that deal different types of damage. It's no secret that 5th edition sorely lacks the ability for martial characters to vary up their damage type, and when it comes to a weapon as unique as the blowgun, why not add some more variety to its damage? What I propose is adding different ammo options that are either barbed to deal more piercing damage or inherently poisoned. I'd certainly be willing to part with more of my gold if it means I can do even 1d4 piercing damage with each shot of my blowgun. In fact, you could even add specialty tranquilizer darts that are unique to the blowgun, granting players an inherently non-lethal damage type for when they want to rescue, an NPC. By adding more ammo types, characters can prepare for and adapt to the different threats they're expecting to face, granting deeper customization and choice to the players. My second suggestion on how to fix the blowgun is to increase its range to 30 feet normally and 120 feet at disadvantage. A basic range of 25 feet is awkward, forcing characters to get within 30 feet of an enemy to hit them. This, in turn, makes blowgun users more vulnerable to being engaged in melee, especially if facing enemies that have movement speeds greater than 30 feet. Increasing the range to 30-120 gives ranged characters a bit more of a safety buffer, and brings the blowgun on par with the hand crossbow, sling, and javelin in terms of range. Now, this doesn't make the blowgun the best ranged weapon in the game, of course, but it does make it a bit easier to use without having to expose yourself to melee attacks. My third and final suggestion on how to fix the blowgun in D&D is to grant it a weapon property that makes it easier to conceal. As I said earlier, concealing a weapon is something that players can already do, but it's entirely up to DM discretion. Rather than put the judgment of those rulings all on the DM, we can instead define an actual rule for concealing weapons in the game. What I had imagined was something like this, where two-handed or heavy weapons have a higher DC, and smaller or lighter weapons have a lower DC. Once this rule would be in place, we could also add a weapon property to certain weapons like the blowgun that grant advantage on these sleight of hand checks that conceal them. Now, I admit this might be too much to add, but I do think it really highlights which weapons players can choose from if they're explicitly trying to sneak weapons into a restricted area, prioritizing daggers, short swords, blowguns, and darts over things like greatswords and great axes. With that, I also need to mention that anything that changes the inherent rules of the system is going to be a big point of contention, and I'm hesitant to suggest changing the rules of 5e simply to make one weapon slightly more viable in the game. So while I think this suggestion could benefit a wide variety of weapons, make sure to let me know what you think about it down in the comments. All that being said, these are just a few of my own suggestions on how to fix the blowgun in D&D. If we left it as is, I fear that the blowgun would remain yet another exotic weapon oversimplified for 5th edition. These suggestions do increase the complexity of the game, but if we're going to have the blowgun as a weapon option, it should be at least somewhat viable, even if it remains niche in the grand scheme of things. With that, we come to the end of today's video on the blowgun. While the idea of a silent, poison-tipped dart may seem like an appealing weapon on paper, the raw mechanics of how to accomplish that in-game is just too inconvenient. By tweaking the blowgun's range, ammo types, or maybe even adding better concealment rules to D&D, we can turn the blowgun into a stealthy ranged option that parties can utilize for creative ideas. However, what I want to know is, what do you think of the blowgun? Do you think it's fine as is? Did you like some of the suggestions I put forward, or did you have your own ideas on how to fix the blowgun in D&D? You can let me know down in the comments, or you can discuss it on the Alt-Roll Discord using the link in the description. If you want to support Alt-Roll, you can visit our Ko-fi to leave a one-time or recurring donation, and make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to be notified when our videos go live. For now, that's all I had for you. Thank you all for watching, make sure to have a great rest of your day, and I'll see all of you next time.